Whenever a new technology for communications develops, government tries to impose stricter regulation upon expression in that medium than it did in previous ones. You know, so print was well protected by the First Amendment. Everybody understood, as was public speech. Radio and television come along, and on the pretext of limited bandwidth, the government succeeded in sharply limiting what you can do and say on radio and television. And we're afraid that the same scenario is getting played out with with digital media. In this case, it's not limited bandwidth, it's intellectual property that's the pretext. It's proprietary data. It's the possibility that what is being conveyed is stolen property rather than free speech. And under that pretext, then they are trying to regulate digital conversation because it might contain somebody else's property. The human race seems to be moving onto the map, in a sense. I mean, it's moving off the landscape. It's moving out of the world of material properties and moving into this completely computer-generated and mediated field of platonic existence. In the process of doing this, it's trying to take a lot of its old cultural metaphors with it. For example, with regard to property, I mean, institutions have understandings about what property is based on many years of dealing with tangible goods. I mean, if I steal your horse, you don't have your horse anymore. And I do. And that kind of metaphor doesn't apply very well to intellectual property. In fact, it doesn't apply at all. Because I can steal your horse in that sense, and you still have it. I can reproduce your horse 1,000,000 times, and not only have I not necessarily diminished the value of your horse, I may have turned your horse into the standard for horses. I mean, you can make a pretty good case that Lotus 123 became the standard for spreadsheets, which is almost unassailable, an iron standard, in spite of the fact that there have been many advances in that field since Mitch Kapor came up with that, on the basis of the fact that it was probably the most pirated computer program of all time. By the same token, the Grateful Dead, for whom I write songs, has always had an extremely slack understanding of its intellectual property and willingness to disseminate it. So we let people tape all of our concerts, and I think this has actually been instrumental in increasing our record sales. To get back to intellectual property for a moment, after a period of time, we're going to start to understand what this stuff is and deal with it accordingly. But it's just going to take a major cultural shift. And then the law, which proceeds at a pace that is second only to geology in its deliberation, is going to have to follow that. But right now, I mean, you have this incredible divergence between publicly accepted practice with software, for example, and the law, which is staying steady. I mean, people use software and reproduce it in a way that has no moral stigma attached to reproduction. I mean, people pirate programs, they pirate videotapes, they pirate audio cassettes. To admit to your friends that you have pirated one of these electronic media is to incur no shame whatsoever. But the law is over here saying it's wrong. Well, you know, obviously a problem is going to come up, a series of problems, and there's going to be a lot of lawyers are going to make a lot of money for quite a while.
Heart attacks can be deadly. By Root Bitch. Brought to you by tulipblooms.shop. Promo code Shapiro. The CIA's worldwide kill squads by Roy Norton. Approved for release March 6th, 2001. Inside the vast globe-girdling Central Intelligence Agency, there is an obscure department known as Staff D. The D could stand for death or destroy, because this small band of professional assassins equipped with the latest in weaponry and gadgetry murder on order those persons considered a threat to the national security of the U.S. Mr. G was certainly not thinking of his own death as he hurried down the corridor to his hotel room in Guatemala. His mind swarmed with the details of smuggling rifles and machine guns to a band of communist-backed revolutionists in Mexico. They had money to pay for weapons and wanted delivery at a secret point on Mexico's eastern coast. A fishing boat captain from Grand Isle, Louisiana, was to make the delivery. Mr. G was thinking of the sizable profits he would make from the deal and barely noticed a thin, well-dressed young man step out of a room down the hallway. The young man coughed, covering his face with a handkerchief. The two men drew abreast. "Are you an American?" the young man asked. Mr. G turned, and his eyes widened with fright. He stared into the barrel of an 8-inch long aluminum tube. Click! A strange vapor spurted from the metal device surrounding Mr. G's face. "What the hell?" he stammered, breathing the sour fumes into his lungs. He crumpled to the floor, face turning purple. The young man placed the aluminum tube in his pocket and casually walked down the hall and stairway to the lobby. It took exactly 72 seconds for Mr. G to die. He died just as the young man walked out into the street. Several minutes later, a hotel maid found the body and screamed her alarm. It was another 20 minutes before an ambulance arrived. That evening, a death certificate was prepared. Heart attack was the verdict. The examining doctors knew nothing of a odorless, colorless poison carefully sealed in a thin capsule and shot out of a hermetically sealed aluminum tube. Bizarre poisons are seldom discussed at medical meetings. Few coroners know that such a capsule fired no more than 24 inches from the victim's face will produce almost instant death. The deadly vapors are breathed into the lungs. Arteries that carry blood to the brain are paralyzed instantly. Within seconds, the victim begins to die. Within minutes, all traces of the poisonous vapor disappear long before an autopsy can be performed. Fidel Castro, shown here addressing the UN General Assembly in 1960, was target of CIA assassination plot that was canceled because of too many complications, part of the Bay of Pigs invasion for study maps in a jungle outpost before the actual attack, which ended in disaster. The poison was developed in a Russian laboratory in the late 1950s and brought to the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency in 1961, when Bogdan Stashinsky defected to the West. Stashinsky, a trained assassin for the KGB, Commissariat Gosudarstvennoy Bezopasnosti, or Soviet Committee for State Security, knew the vapor was an effective murder weapon. He had eliminated 2 anti-Soviet exile agents in West Germany before surrendering to U.S. counter-spies. Mr. G was just one of the many victims of the poison since then. A member of the shadowy world of international manipulators, he was a clever soldier of fortune who specialized in gun running, dope smuggling, and political intrigue. Like his fellow entrepreneurs, he fed on revolt and revolution, hurrying to the world's hottest trouble spots in order to fatten his bank balance. The assassin with the deadly aluminum tube was an illegal or black agent in the plans section of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. He is attached to Staff D, an obscure department known inside the agency as the Kill Squad. Equipped with the latest in weaponry and gadgetry, these agents kill the enemy on order. Their victims are those persons considered a threat to the national security of the United States. In the example above, a communist-inspired revolution south of the border would be a threat to the U.S., hence it was necessary to eliminate Mr. G. Members of the kill squad are the glamour boys of the CIA's 20,000-man spy organization. They are the true professionals in the back alley battles of Cold War espionage, cold-bloodedly. They can murder a double agent in Berlin, liquidate a person who may jeopardize U.S. security, or arrange for an assassination squad to kill the political leader of an unfriendly country. Naturally, many of these projects are surrounded by the highest secrecy. There are stiff penalties to prevent present or former agents of the CIA from discussing their experiences. "I've been out of the company for 2 years," remarked an ex-agent. "However, if they knew I was talking, I could be taken into custody without a warrant, held indefinitely, and brought to a secret trial. More than one person has been whisked out to the mansion for interrogation after they talked in public." Remember the famous U2 incident involving Francis Gary Powers? Here are the never-before published facts about this top-secret CIA operation and why the downing of the spook plane was really part of the most incredible espionage feat of the Cold War. The mansion is the CIA's top-secret 65-acre private estate located a few miles from Oxford, Maryland, along the Chaptank River. The mansion and the grounds are protected by high electrified fences, armed guards, and a patrol of vicious German Shepherd dogs. However, despite all this official secrecy, many persons in and out of the agency have become disenchanted with the CIA. Others seek power through office politics. Like any other bureaucratic group, there are cliques inside the CIA struggling for supremacy over the vast spy network. Some informants were recruited, trained, sent into the field, and quickly became disillusioned by the realities of espionage. "It looks good only in the movies," remarked one source. From interviews developed over a span of 14 months, considerable data on the CIA was obtained. Despite the secrecy, the agency constantly bubbles with wild stories and fantastic rumors. Separating the fact from the fantastic was no easy task. Since this information cannot be verified officially, every effort has been made to ensure accuracy within these limitations. My information includes an aborted assassination plot against Fidel Castro during his visit to New York for an appearance before the United Nations, the formation and training of paramilitary assassination squads, staffed by Cubans and dedicated to killing Castro, kill to protect orders on the U-2 spy plane, persistent rumors concerning the possible murder of several U.S. citizens, details on the latest weaponry and gadgetry. Get Castro like some ancient bearded demon. Fidel Castro is a satanic figure to CIA agents. He is Satan incarnate, a living reminder of the agency's failures in Cuba, the Bay of Pigs, and other fiascos, reported a former agent. "They've tried everything to get Castro. Nothing has worked." Originally, the agency was lax in determining Castro's political beliefs. A CIA briefing to President Eisenhower's Board of Consultants on foreign intelligence activities in late 1960 reported Castro as being a political enigma. A still secret report declared that Castro did not become a communist until after the Bay of Pigs. Prior to that time, his public statements did not reflect Marxist directions, the report stated. Nevertheless, there were those in the CIA who did not trust Castro even in 1960. "If he walks, talks, and acts like a communist, I say he is one," a crusty CIA official declared. Others agreed, and when Castro announced his intentions to visit the United Nations, an assassination plot was formed. "A visit to the U.S. by a foreign leader is a good opportunity to obtain information," explained a former agent. "The CIA almost always maintains a hospitality suite for the American policeman assigned to guard a visiting dignitary. We debrief them through casual questioning. Surprisingly, we often pick up important intelligence data. When Khrushchev visited the U.S. a few years ago, the police reported he was hitting the bottle. He was also abrupt and he treated his associates in a demeaning manner. This indicated a possible power struggle that ended when the old boy was ousted. Castro came to New York in 1960, and the CIA opened a hospitality suite at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. Off-duty policemen assigned to guard Castro were offered the finest in food and drink, served and poured by CIA agents. But the assassination plot was aborted. Why? One agent said there were just too many complications. Shortly after Castro's visit to New York, the CIA selected several Cuban exiles to staff CIA-financed assassination squads. The idea was that a four-man team would return to Cuba, set up posts near Castro's headquarters, and kill him in a crossfire from high-powered sniper rifles equipped with bullets that exploded on impact. Another team was assembled to hit Castro when and if he made a public appearance. Still another team was trained to blow up his office using powerful explosives. The assassination squads were trained in the Florida Everglades under the direction of a graduate of a World War II OSS assassination school. Marine officers assigned to the CIA assisted in the training. Several squads were trained, but Castro's intelligence men learned of our intentions, an ex-agent said. There are rumors of at least 2 attempts made on Castro's life. Both failed. I don't know if this was our CIA squads or some ordinary Cuban citizen. What happened to the remaining assassins? There was always work for a man schooled in murder, concluded my informant. At least one of these men was at the Bay of Pigs. Later, he flew some of the old B-26 bombers for the CIA in the Congo rebellion. He got a bellyful of the Congo after being ordered to fly over native villages and indiscriminately fire on civilians. He dropped out of sight after that. Some critics of the CIA, particularly those who dispute the lone assassin verdict in the death of President John Kennedy, believe the CIA is responsible for the murders of several world leaders. Controversial New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison is the most vocal of those who claim a conspiracy exists. Garrison is convinced of CIA involvement in the Dallas assassination. Quote, I have absolutely no doubt that the murders of President John Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. were carried out by the Central Intelligence Agency, Garrison declared recently. Remember, March 6, 2001 was the release of this article. He cited several similarities in the 2 murders: the professional marksmanship, announcements from the government that no conspiracy existed were made before the investigation, the use of scapegoats, Oswald and Ray, and allegedly misleading information surrounding the assassinations. Many Negro leaders, particularly those in Memphis, Tennessee, said there were valid reasons to reopen the investigation of Dr. King's assassination. A group of independent, self-financed investigators have been sifting the facts in several assassinations for more than a year. They are concerned with what are considered similarities in the deaths of Patrice Lumumba, Dag Hammarskjöld, Senator Robert Kennedy, President John Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and Negro leader Malcolm X. There are certain patterns in these murders to warrant further investigation, one investigator declared. Another investigator was more outspoken. I am convinced that a clique within the Central Intelligence Agency or the CIA-linked group is responsible for several assassinations, he reported. I just find it too incredible to believe an agency of the U.S. government would cold-bloodedly murder President Kennedy or assassinate some of the best minds in the modern world simply because the victims did not believe in the Cold War. However, these independent investigators are not overly optimistic about the results of their investigations. If we had everything down in black and white, hard evidence, no one would believe it, one man concluded. The facts are few, the theories numerous. The U-2 murders. Quote, intelligence flights over unfriendly countries started as early as 1952 or 1953 using the early U-2 planes under CIA jurisdiction, a former CIA agent revealed. The U-2 flights have continued to this day, despite the photographs we obtained from Samos, the Satellite and Missile Observation System, SAMOS. Those spies in the sky were launched in 1961. The U-2 planes flown over Russia were highly improved aircraft. Their range was tremendous and their altitude was quite high, he continued. The CIA was charged with protecting these planes from any publicity, and an English civilian was eliminated when he attempted to take pictures of the U-2 at Lakenheath, England. Quote, I heard of another incident that allegedly occurred at Atsugi Airport near Tokyo in the fall of 1959. A Japanese teenager slipped onto the base and snapped a few pictures which he hoped to sell to newspapers or magazines. Word got back to someone, and the next evening, the teenager drowned himself. Naturally, I assume he had very little choice and was probably held under the water by an agent, he concluded. Are the assassinations of civilians cleared through channels? Must prior approval be obtained? Quote, answer, absolutely not. An agent in the black section is trained and charged to make his own decisions, the informant said. An agent may be out of contact with his superiors for long periods of time. If security is compromised, they will remember that dead men tell no tales. Also, a request for permission to kill indicates an agent may have slipped up somewhere along the line. Your superiors in the agency do not like mistakes. You do what you must do to protect the national security, and you do it well. An agent might request a professional assassin if he is confronted with a particularly complicated job. Then the agency would send a pro or two out into the field. It was essential that the U-2 project be protected by kill orders. Never published until now is the fact that the U-2 flights were a vital link in one of America's most awesome weapons systems. Despite his braggart's shouts, Russian Premier Nikita Khrushchev and his predecessors knew the CIA pulled off an important coup in the Cold War. The following information was obtained from a former U-2 pilot and was verified by other sources. The U-2 was a beautiful plane, the pilot said. There were several windows built into the bottom of the craft, designed to photograph enemy installations from high altitudes. This was an important function of the flights over Russia and China. However, there was another gadget in the plane and a system of pushing buttons at certain points along the flight, he continued. These buttons activated a recording device that made a radar imprint on tape of the plane's flight over the Earth. We obtained a flight pattern on the tape. After processing, the radar tape could be locked into an atomic missile. The missile guidance system is set up to follow the exact pattern of the tape from launching until strike down. The missile might deviate off course, but it has come back and to seek out the pattern of the tape. It is a foolproof system for directing a missile directly on target without missing by an inch, he said. Once that missile is launched, nothing other than a shoot-down can stop it from hitting directly on target. Scramble systems can foul up a computer-directed missile. The topography of the Earth for several hundred miles needs to be changed to stop a radar tape-directed missile. That's an impossibility, so the missile is ready to hit directly on target. When Francis Gary Powers crashed and Nikita Khrushchev discovered we had missiles homed in right on his head, he almost went nuts, the pilot continued. He knew there was absolutely nothing he could do. We've been zeroed in for years on every important target in Russia and Red China. Some intelligence people believe the crash of Powers' U-2 plane was no accident. The whole thing was just never added up, the pilot concluded. Things are never what they seem in espionage. A secret weapon is no good unless the enemy knows about it. If Powers did play such a role in a setup crash inside Russia, it would be the most incredible espionage story in history. The U-3, a shark-shaped, more powerful spy plane, is continuing to make flights over enemy territory. Today, pilot Powers tests the planes at Burbank, California, plant of the Lockheed Aircraft Corp. Flights are regularly made over Red China, with nationalist Chinese pilots from Formosa, Taiwan, flying the planes. The planes continue to return with important photographs and radar tapes of Red China's strategic targets. He was an idealist. Central Intelligence Agency trainees are called JOTS, junior officer trainees. During their extensive training program, some trainees receive underwater and jungle warfare training at a secret CIA camp in a southern swamp. Others are given training at a CIA base located near Las Vegas, Nevada, on the travel-restricted area of the Atomic Energy Commission's Nevada Proving Grounds. While assassination is seldom discussed openly by the instructors, it is present in CIA classes by implication. A former agent told of an instructor's remarks to the class one afternoon during his training. Quote, "A U.S. citizen happened to stumble onto a base where the company was training Cubans for the Bay of Pigs invasion. He took several photographs of equipment with U.S. markings on the side. This was before the markings were to be removed for the actual invasion. If the photographs were published, it would have been a very serious breach of security at the Bay of Pigs. He arrived in New York and was stopped and interrogated. Offers were made to purchase the pictures and buy him off. He was an idealist and refused to cooperate," the instructor said. "He was crossing a street when a truck veered out of control, struck and killed him, and, fellows, those pictures and negatives just plain disappeared during all the confusion." End quote. Trainees also hear of an old, grizzled desert gold prospector who unknowingly wandered into a restricted military area with top-secret installations. The company man knew there was a 99% chance the old boy would keep his mouth shut, trainees were informed, but no chance could be taken. The prospector was eliminated and buried in an unmarked grave. The CIA's assassination squads in Vietnam are known as the Intelligence Coordination and Exploitation Unit. Trainees are told of ICE terrorists trained by Special Forces and Green Berets who have been unsuccessful in capturing or killing numerous communist sympathizers. CIA agents work very closely with Green Berets and UDT teams in Vietnam, the informant said. Almost every ex-agent has a story involving the death of a U.S. citizen who unknowingly jeopardized national security in one way or another. These stories frequently concern someone who stumbled onto a secret military base on U.S. soil. These unsubstantiated tales include stories of people who wandered into a Cuban training camp operated by the CIA in the Florida Everglades. "Those nuts in there are pretty darn trigger-happy," said an agent. A few got into an argument between themselves a few months ago, ending with a shootout that brought the county sheriff into the brawl. It took some real fancy footwork to keep that incident off the front pages. Mental instability, nervous breakdowns, and mental aberrations with paranoid tendencies are an occupational hazard for the CIA agent. "You get to be a bit paranoid if you're in this business for any length of time," admitted a former agent. Another agent chasing their wives or girlfriends with knives or guns. One poor soul took an 8-inch butcher knife and decided to carve up his landlady. A larger than usual number of employees are arrested in Washington, D.C. or the neighboring communities in compromising situations involving morals charges. "A dubious fringe benefit is a private sanitarium," he said. "Security might be compromised if an agent was treated by an outside psychiatrist. This sounds good, but it can backfire. A young analyst requested to be relieved of his duties. He felt the pressure was too much. The agency did not act. Finally, James Woodbury and his wife Dorothy made a suicide pact and leaped off a bridge down at Great Falls, Virginia. Our suicide rate is much higher than that for the average population." What frightens this agent and many others is a nagging fear that an agent in the field may someday go berserk. A single man with training in explosives, killing, and every type of dirty warfare could disrupt an entire metropolitan city, he said. "Someday we may wake up and find such an incident on our front pages." Weaponry. Like their fictional counterparts, the management at the CIA has a fascination for sophisticated weaponry. Very few of the bizarre items in their spy arsenal conform to the Geneva Conventions regarding modern armories. Many are so secret that few people outside the CIA know about them. One diabolical device is a candidate for the ultimate weapon. This is an electronic gadget that changes the role of electrical insulators and conductors, I was told. An insulator becomes a conductor and vice versa. The device can be attached to an automobile, a telephone, or an electrical appliance, and the victim is electrocuted. At present, the device works only on a single appliance. The labs hope to come up with a pyramiding system, the informant said. The device could then be attached to a point in a city's electrical system. The entire city's electrical grid would be transformed from positive negative to negative positive. All the humans would be electrocuted, while the building and physical facilities would be unharmed. There has also been considerable CIA-financed research into weapons using sound waves and vibrations. A ray gun, now available, will penetrate a brick wall with waves or vibrations and scramble the brain of any human in the structure. Another device is humorously referred to as the ultimate weapon to end war forever. A research technician in the laboratory of a musical instrument factory was testing sound waves and vibrations one afternoon. He adjusted the machine to a certain point, snapped the switch on, and had a sizable and unexpected bowel movement, my informant said. He snapped off the machine, cleaned himself, returned, and had an instant replay of the same experience. By the end of the afternoon, executives concluded they had an awesome weapon to control rioters and looters in the streets. The device emitted a vibration that relaxed the sphincter muscle in the human body. They felt the device would hurt their image as a musical instrument manufacturer, I was told. This was back in 1967, and riot-control weapons were needed by the police, continued the informant. This gadget could be turned on, and anyone within range would instantly be stopped in his tracks. Riot control officers in several cities tested the weapon. It immobilized anyone within range. The ultimate weapon was discussed at a seminar at a convention of chiefs of police in Kansas City, and a brief mention was published in the Kansas City Star. A few of the chiefs were asking about the tissue concession if the weapon was used. My informant said the cops were intelligent and realized that while a mob could be stopped, the victims would also be driven underground. Hit and run guerrilla warfare would replace mass demonstrations. However, the weapons technicians at the CIA had no worry about embarrassed victims. We've tested the weapon in Vietnam, admitted the informant. Diaper-clad helicopter pilots fly over Viet Cong bunkers, turn on the weapon, and the waves undoubtedly create considerable chaos in the tunnels. Diaper-clad. It's because they shit themselves too. The problem with the ultimate weapon is that anyone within range is affected by the sound waves. The device doesn't recognize national origins, admitted the ex-agent. However, on a widespread and larger use, such a weapon could conceivably immobilize an entire army in the field. Planes could fly over an advancing enemy broadcasting an amplified signal. It could conceivably demoralize an army. Also sounds like a really good cure for constipation. There are dozens of humorous, unsubstantiated stories surrounding the ultimate weapon. One man allegedly stole the schematics, constructed a device, and built it onto his automobile. Clad in diapers, the man and a carload of friends terrorized an intersection filled with downtown shoppers one evening. They also raced through small towns after midnight, gleefully beaming sound waves into the surrounding homes. On the deadlier side, CIA chemists have developed a new nerve gas which contains two chemicals which are not poisonous themselves. However, when the chemicals are mixed with each other, a deadly nerve gas results. These are common chemicals. They're stored in two separate compartments of a bottle which breaks on impact, the source said. This makes it easy to carry a nerve gas without danger. Poison is a favorite weapon among the CIA's black agents. The most useful poisons are those of the curare family, a CIA favorite. Crystalline curare is extremely powerful. Only 0.023 grams are required to kill a person. One gadget used by agents is a curare-tipped dart fired from a small blowgun, which resembles a cigarette. A cigarette lighter can also be used as a powerful mechanical dart gun, shooting a poisoned dart across a room. One of the most diabolical devices in the CIA arsenal is a concave piece of steel fitted onto the top of a tin can containing plastic explosives. When exploded, the steel turns into a white-hot cannonball. The occupants of a room would be blown to bits. When attached to the gasoline tank of a car or bus, the device tosses flaming gasoline over the interior and incinerates the occupants. Other weapons include the traditional silencer-equipped machine guns, pistols, and burp guns. These are usually equipped with custom-made ammunition that explodes on impact. Whatever the dark side of man can conceive, we have in our arsenal, a former agent said. What can we conclude about the CIA and the use of kill squads? Although a newcomer to international espionage, the Central Intelligence Agency has become one of the world's leading, perhaps the best, intelligence gathering agencies. However, the basic weakness in any spy organization is that a reckless, untruthful, unscrupulous schemer makes the perfect agent. The perfect agent can always be dangerous to a democratic society unless held in check. We have focused on a single aspect of the CIA. There are many achievements and several failures. Assassination squads, certainly, remarked a former agent. We're fighting an unscrupulous enemy. Ask the people of Poland, Hungary, or East Germany. Ask the Czechs. Truly, the light of freedom is beautiful. We have to keep it that way.
At Tulip Blooms, we believe in more than just skincare. We believe in freedom. We believe in natural products made by Americans, for Americans, using nature's finest ingredients to help you feel your best. Each Tulip Blooms product is carefully crafted with pure organic ingredients. No chemicals, no compromises, just clean, natural skincare you can trust. We know what matters to you: freedom, family, and a healthy way of life. That's why every purchase at tulipblooms.shop supports American jobs and a brand that values your freedom. Join the movement. Support a company that believes what you believe in. Visit tulipblooms.shop today. Tulip Blooms, natural skincare for patriots.
Drop number 634, heart attacks can be deadly. Q drop number 677 of January 27th, 2018. At Snowden, the clock is ticking. How's Russia, Mr. Contractor? Freedom of the press, John Perry Barlow. https://freedom.press. Secure drop. Whistleblowers? Secure drop. Clowns in America. Nobody is safe. Q. Headline: John Perry Barlow, Internet Pioneer, 1947 to 2018. Deep Links blog by Cindy Cohn, February 7, 2018. With a broken heart, I have to announce that EFF's founder, visionary, and our ongoing inspiration, John Perry Barlow, passed away quietly in his sleep this morning. We will miss Barlow and his wisdom for decades to come, and he will always be an integral part of EFF. It is no exaggeration to say that major parts of the internet we all know and love today exist and thrive because of Barlow's vision and leadership. He always saw the internet as a fundamental place of freedom, where voices long silenced can find an audience and people can connect with others, regardless of physical distance. could solve all of humanity's problems without causing any more. As someone who spent the past 27 years working with him at EFF, I can say that nothing could be further from the truth. Barlow knew that new technology could create and empower evil as much as it could create and empower good. He made a conscious decision to focus on the latter. Quote, I knew it's also true that a good way to invent the future is to predict it. So I predicted utopia, hoping to give liberty a running start before the laws of Moore and Metcalfe delivered up what Ed Snowden now correctly calls turnkey totalitarianism. End quote. Barlow's lasting legacy is that he devoted his life to making the internet into, quote, a world that all may enter without privilege or prejudice accorded by race, economic power, military force, or station of birth. A world where anyone, anywhere, may express his or her beliefs, no matter how singular, without fear of being coerced into silence or conformity. End quote. In the days and weeks to come, we will be talking and writing more about what an extraordinary role Barlow played for the internet and the world, and as always, we will continue to work to fulfill his dream. Barlow was sometimes held up as a straw man for a kind of naive techno-utopianism that believed that the internet could solve all of humanity's problems without causing any more. As someone who spent the past 27 years working with him at EFF, I can say that nothing could be further from the truth. Heart attacks can be deadly. Q. Extract from Q Drop 2305. 387356. James Dolan, dead, suicide. Aaron Schwartz, dead, suicide. Kevin Paulson, turned over secure drop to freedom of the press. John Perry Barlow, 187, post name drop. At Snowden, you are now a liability. Q. John Barlow dig. Who would want to kill John Barlow? What benefit would John Barlow's death provide? When was John Barlow murdered? Did John Barlow survive a murder attempt only to succumb to its lingering effects eventually? Washington Post. Meet the man whose utopian vision for the internet conquered and then warped Silicon Valley. By Jacob Silverman. To understand where this cyber libertarian ideology came from, you have to understand the influence of A Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace, one of the strangest artifacts of the 90s, and its singular author, John Perry Barlow, perhaps more than any other. It's his philosophy, which melded countercultural utopianism, a rancher's skepticism toward government, and a futurist's faith in the virtual world that shaped the industry. A Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace was an utterly serious document for a deliriously optimistic era. Barlow's 846-word text, published online in February 1996, begins with a bold rebuke of traditional sovereign powers. Quote, governments of the industrial world, you weary giants of flesh and steel, I come from cyberspace, the new home of mind. On behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather. End quote. He then explains how cyberspace is a place of ultimate freedom where conventional laws don't apply. When Eric Schmidt describes the internet, however misguidedly, as the world's largest ungoverned space in his book, The New Digital Age, he is borrowing Barlow's rhetoric. When tech mogul Peter Thiel writes in The Education of a Libertarian that he founded PayPal to create a currency free from government control, and that, quote, by starting a new internet business, an entrepreneur may create a new world, it's impossible not to hear Barlovian echoes. Barlow. Grandiose attitude is so common now that HBO has a comedy, Silicon Valley, dedicated to mocking it. The above article, WashingtonPost.com, was published on March 20th, 2015. Barlow suffered a near-fatal heart attack on May 27th, 2015. He later reported that he was recovering. John Perry Barlow, 187, post name drop. 187 equals murder. Post equals Washington Post. Barlovian equals name drop. Q suggests Barlow was murdered for his ability to influence through his activities in the Freedom of the Press Foundation. The Washington Post article highlights Barlow's ability to influence wealthy techno-capitalists towards his idealistic goals. At Snowden, you are now a liability. Freedom of the Press Foundation, FPF, is a non-profit organization founded in 2012 to fund and support free speech and freedom of the press. Its mission includes, quote, promoting and funding aggressive public interest journalism focused on exposing mismanagement, corruption, and law-breaking in government. If wealthy people support Barlow's idealistic goals, then they might help support the Freedom of the Press Foundation's goals, quote, promoting and funding aggressive public interest journalism focused on exposing mismanagement, corruption, and law-breaking in government, end quote. Edward Snowden has moved into the position which was vacant due to Barlow's death. Q is stating Edward Snowden is identified as a liability by the same individuals who caused John Barlow's 187. Other unanswered questions. Whose crimes are threatened to be exposed by John Barlow's activities? Was John Barlow's relationship with Dick Cheney part of the motive that led to his death? Was the heart-related death of Barlow's girlfriend, Cynthia Horner, a botched first attempt to murder John Barlow? John Barlow was engaged to Cynthia Horner, a doctor whom he met in 1993 at the Moscone Center in San Francisco while she was attending a psychiatry conference, and Barlow was participating in a Steve Jobs comedy roast at a convention for the Next computer. Cynthia Horner died unexpectedly in 1994 while asleep on a flight from Los Angeles to New York City days before her 30th birthday from a heart arrhythmia apparently caused by an undetected viral myocarditis. The CDC on myocarditis. Clinical considerations: myocarditis and pericarditis after receipt of COVID-19 vaccines among adolescents and young adults. Cases of myocarditis and pericarditis have rarely been observed after COVID-19 vaccination in the United States, and evidence from multiple vaccine safety monitoring systems in the United States and around the globe supports a causal association between mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, i.e. Moderna or Pfizer BioNTech, and myocarditis and pericarditis. Myocarditis is inflammation of the heart muscle, and pericarditis is inflammation of the lining outside the heart. Myopericarditis is when both myocarditis and pericarditis occur at the same time. In these conditions, inflammation occurs in response to an infection or some other trigger. CDC has published case definitions for myocarditis and pericarditis. Though cases of myocarditis and pericarditis are rare, when cases have occurred, they have most frequently been seen in adolescent and young adult males within 7 days after receiving the second dose of an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. However, cases have also been observed in females in other age groups and after other doses. The severity of myocarditis and pericarditis cases can vary. Most patients with myocarditis after mRNA COVID-19 vaccination have experienced resolution of symptoms by hospital discharge. CDC has published studies with clinical information about myocarditis and pericarditis after COVID-19 vaccination. Data from the clinical trials of the Novavax COVID-19 vaccine and post-authorization vaccine safety monitoring outside the United States suggest an increased risk of myocarditis and pericarditis following Novavax vaccination. Something to consider: could general vaccine injuries be used to cover up more targeted poisoning? If we don't at least consider the possibility, then we risk falling into an echo chamber trap. Extract from Q-Drop number 2023. Define echo chamber. A metaphorical description of a situation in which beliefs are amplified or reinforced by communication and repetition inside a closed system. Prior to new platforms, networks, connecting people, did the old guard have full control? Did the old guard learn from this mistake, 2016 election, and now tasking all new platforms, networks, to censor? When you are awake, you can see clearly. Q.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from. I grew up on a ranch near Pinedale, Wyoming, a very free town not far from the middle of nowhere. It was the kind of place these fellows would have recognized, the kind of place they came from. It was the kind of place where a state legislator could actually say, if the English language was good enough for our Lord Jesus Christ, it's good enough for our school children. Well, it was a hick town, but it was also a real community. There was a lot of trust. Neither the locks nor the lawyers got used much. People knew each other and tried to let one another be. After all, they'd come to that wild, remote place to be free. Liberty was a fierce practice among them. That it might also be a legal guarantee seemed kind of irrelevant. It seems to me that elsewhere in America, liberty is far more a matter of law than practice. The Bill of Rights is still on the books, and they'd have a hell of a time putting you in jail for just saying something. But how free are we? Whatever the guarantees, I believe liberty resides in its exercise. Liberty is about the ability to feel free and behave accordingly. You are only as free as you act. Free people must be willing to speak up and listen. They can't merely consume the fruits of liberty. They have to produce them. This exercise of liberty requires that people trust one another and the institutions they make together. They have to feel at home in their society. Well, Americans don't appear to trust one another much these days. Why else would we employ 3 times more lawyers per capita than we did in 1970? Why else would our universities be so determined to impose tolerance that they'll expel you for saying what you think and never even notice the irony? Why else would we teach our children to fear all strangers? Why else have we become so afraid to look one another in the eye? We have come to regard trust as a kind of foolishness, and fear is necessary. We live in terror that the people around us might actually figure out what we're thinking. Frankly, this America doesn't feel very free to me at all. What has happened to our liberty? These days, we view much of our world through a television screen. Most of our knowledge comes from information about things and not experience with them. Let me return to Pinedale for an example. Those folks killed each other pretty regularly, but there wasn't much fear. They knew each other. And if somebody got shot, it wasn't too hard to figure out why. Homicide was no abstract threat. It was familiar, like wild horses or winter. We also knew that today's opponent might be the only person along to pull you out of a snowdrift tomorrow. So tolerance and trust were practical necessities. Living more or less safely in a world we more or less understood, we found liberty an easy thing to keep in Pinedale. But elsewhere, as I say, the average American sense of the world has been derived by staring at it through the one-way tunnel of information. And what the media appear to have taught my fellow citizens is that all the world is dangerous in some irrational, non-specific way. Terrorists are everywhere. Nature is an open rebellion. Making love can kill you. Your fellow humans are liars in suits, thugs, zealots, psychopaths, and mostly victims who look a lot like you. Television amplifies the world's mayhem. It gives you no way to talk back, no way to ask, is this the way the world really is? Just as right now, it's giving you no way to argue with me.
Editing. Larry, please stop.
Why does television prefer terrifying images? Because it lives on your attention. That's what television is really saying. And scaring the hell out of you is, like sex, one of those really efficient ways to get your undivided focus. To gain it, they flood your living room with images designed to hit your fear glands like electricity. So we have erected a glowing altar to terror in the center of our lives, and fear has become our national religion.
We asked the government to defend us against the virtual goblins that stream from the tube, and the government has obliged us. For example, in 1992, a total of 2 Americans died in terrorist attacks, which is not what I would call a major threat. But our fear of them is so real that we spend tens of billions a year to protect ourselves from terrorism. For many Americans, making the car payments depends on keeping this fear alive. But you cannot build a society of general trust in an atmosphere of general fear. The fearful are never free. If we are to fight back, if we are to regain the courage necessary to the practice of liberty, we are going to have to stage another kind of revolution. We need to find a new means of understanding the world that takes no profit from our fear. We need a medium that, like life itself, allows us to probe it for the truth. We need, in essence, to cut out the middleman and speak directly to one another. We need a place where we can share information unfiltered by the needs or desires of either Big Brother or the marketing department down at Channel 6. Such a medium may be spreading across the planet in a thickening web of connected computers called the Internet. Through the Internet, I can already get a personal connection with people all over the globe, learning from those on the scene what's really going on. Through the Internet, I can publish my own understandings to anybody who might be interested, in whatever number. During the war in the Persian Gulf, I was able to get minute-by-minute reports from soldiers in the field. The picture they presented felt far more detailed, more troubling and ambiguous than the mass hallucination presented on CNN. The Internet is also creating a new kind of place, many call it cyberspace, where new communities like Pinedale can form. The big difference will be that these cyberspace communities will be possible among people whose bodies are located in many different parts of the globe. Direct communication should breed understanding and tolerance. Our fears will be a lot easier to check out. We may begin to understand that these distant and sometimes alien creatures are real people whose rights are directly connected to our own. I imagine the gathering places of cyberspace, some as intimate as Pinedale's Wrangler Cafe, some more vast than Tiananmen Square. I imagine us meeting there in conditions of trust and liberty that no government will be able to deny. I imagine a world, quite soon to come, in which ideas can spread like fire, as Jefferson said, expansible over all space, without lessening their density at any point. And like the air in which we breathe, incapable of confinement or exclusive appropriation by anyone. If ideas can spread like fire, then freedom, like water, will flow over or around all those that might stand in its path. In cyberspace, I hope that truth will be self-evident.
A declaration of the independence of cyberspace from WEF, from worldeconomicforum.org, February 8th, 2018. 21 years ago in Davos, cyber activist John Perry Barlow, 1947 to 2018, championed a now famous call to protect the sovereignty, liberty, and independence of the internet from government. It is reproduced below. Since then, cases like Apple versus the FBI and the right to be forgotten have challenged these values. Is it time to write a new social contract for the internet? Governments of the industrial world, you weary giants of flesh and steel, I come from cyberspace, the new home of mind. On behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather. We have no elected government, nor are we likely to have one. So I address you with no greater authority than that with which liberty itself always speaks. I declare the global social space we are building to be naturally independent of the tyrannies you seek to impose on us. You have no moral right to rule us, nor do you possess any methods of enforcement we have true reason to fear. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. You have neither solicited nor received ours. We did not invite you. You do not know us, nor do you know our world. Cyberspace does not lie within your borders. Do not think that you can build it as though it were a public construction project. You cannot. It is an act of nature, and it grows itself through our collective actions. You have not engaged in our great and gathering conversation, nor did you create the wealth of our marketplaces. You do not know our culture, our ethics, or the unwritten codes that already provide our society more order than could be obtained by any of your impositions. You claim there are problems among us that you need to solve. You use this claim as an excuse to invade our precincts. Many of these problems don't exist. Where there are real conflicts, where there are wrongs, we will identify them and address them by our means. We are forming our own social contract. This governance will arise according to the conditions of our world, not yours. Our world is different. Cyberspace consists of transactions, relationships, and thought itself, arrayed like a standing wave in the web of our communications. Ours is a world that is both everywhere and nowhere, but it is not where bodies live. We are creating a world that all may enter without privilege or prejudice accorded by race, economic power, military force, or station of birth. We are creating a world where anyone, anywhere, may express his or her beliefs, no matter how singular, without fear of being coerced into silence or conformity. Your legal concepts of property, expression, identity, movement, and context do not apply to us. They are all based on matter, and there is no matter here. Our identities have no bodies, so, unlike you, we cannot obtain order by physical coercion. We believe that from ethics, enlightened self-interest, and the commonweal, our governance will emerge. Our identities may be distributed across many of your jurisdictions. The only law that all our constituent cultures would generally recognize is the Golden Rule. We hope we will be able to build our particular solutions on that basis, but we cannot accept the solutions you are attempting to impose. In the United States, you have today created a law, the Telecommunications Reform Act, which repudiates your own Constitution and insults the dreams of Jefferson, Washington, Mill, Madison, de Tocqueville, and Brandeis. These dreams must now be born anew in us. You are terrified of your own children, since they are natives in a world where you will always be immigrants. Because you fear them, you entrust your bureaucracies with the parental responsibilities you are too cowardly to confront yourselves. In our world, all the sentiments and expressions of humanity, from the debasing to the angelic, are parts of a seamless whole, the global conversation of bits. We cannot separate the air that chokes from the air upon which wings beat. In China, Germany, France, Russia, Singapore, Italy, and the United States, you are trying to ward off the virus of liberty by erecting guard posts at the frontiers of cyberspace. These may keep out the contagion for a small time, but they will not work in a world that will soon be blanketed in bit-bearing media. Your increasingly obsolete information industries would perpetuate themselves by proposing laws in America and elsewhere that claim to own speech itself throughout the world. These laws would declare ideas to be another industrial product, no more noble than pig iron in our world. Whatever the human mind may create can be reproduced and distributed infinitely at no cost. The global conveyance of thought no longer requires your factories to accomplish. These increasingly hostile and colonial measures place us in the same position as those previous lovers of freedom and self-determination who had to reject the authorities of distant, uninformed powers. We must declare our virtual selves immune to your sovereignty, even as we continue to consent to your rule over our bodies. We will spread ourselves across the planet so that no one can arrest our thoughts. We will create a civilization of the mind in cyberspace. May it be more humane and fair than the world your governments have made before. Davos, Switzerland, February 8th, 1996. Q drop number 841 of March 4th, 2018. I've been seeing hashtag free the internet, hashtag internet bill of rights seem good to me. Anyone from War Room here with time charts for maximized reach? Has Q ever mentioned Internet Bill of Rights? Q responds, reread drops. about.att.com /story/consumers need an internet bill of rights.html. Q from that link. Consumers need an internet bill of rights. Government rules for the internet have been debated for nearly as long as the internet has existed, even before a professor coined the term net neutrality 15 years ago. The internet has changed our lives and grown beyond what anyone could have imagined, and it's done so for the most part with very few, but often changing, rules. Regulators under 4 different presidents have taken 4 different approaches. Courts have overturned regulatory decisions. Regulators have reversed their predecessors. And because the internet is so critical to everyone, it's understandably confusing and a bit concerning when you hear the rules have recently changed yet again. It is time for Congress to end the debate once and for all by writing new laws that govern the internet and protect consumers. Until they do, I want to make clear what you can expect from AT&T. AT&T is committed to an open internet. We don't block websites, we don't censor online content, and we don't throttle, discriminate, or degrade network performance based on content. Period. We have publicly committed to these principles for over 10 years, and we will continue to abide by them in providing our customers the open internet experience they have come to expect. But the commitment of one company is not enough. Congressional action is needed to establish an Internet Bill of Rights that applies to all internet companies and guarantees neutrality, transparency, openness, non-discrimination, and privacy protection for all internet users. Legislation would not only ensure consumers' rights are protected, but it would provide consistent rules of the road for all internet companies across all websites, content, devices, and applications. In the very near future, technological advances like self-driving cars, remote surgery, and augmented reality will demand even greater performance from the internet without predictable rules for how the internet works. It will be difficult to meet the demands of these new technology advances. That's why we intend to work with Congress, other internet companies, and consumer groups in the coming months to push for an Internet Bill of Rights that permanently protects the open internet for all users and encourages continued investment for the next generation of internet innovation. Randall Stevenson, AT&T Chairman and CEO. Q drop number 877 of March 7th, 2018. I confess I was a #IBOR, Internet Bill of Rights, resistor. It didn't make sense to me since free speech is already guaranteed in our Constitution, but thinking logically, the one thing that would scare the data mining cabal the most is an articulated right to privacy when using the internet. No more data mining for ads, no more algorithms screwing up how we communicate with others on Facebook, no more capturing my favorite soda to sell to a competitor who might want to make me buy something else. Also, and really important to me, is the right to be forgotten. It's already been adjudicated in Britain. Here's a bit of the detail from The Guardian. Britain opt outright to be forgotten law. We should have a right to disappear. So, if this continues to be a thing, think of it way beyond being censored for free speech. Think of it in terms of privacy, too. No more selling personal information. No more dedicated IPs to track your every move. No more email apps that pre-select your possible replies, because no more email being mined. Mail could be configured with the same privacy rights as US mail, for example. Last, I'll post on this one, but if it goes forward, please consider expanding the scope. Also, keep in mind that there's more than the White House petition site to make your ideas known. Most of us have senators and congressmen to represent us in Washington, D.C. Maybe talk to a real person. Q responds, free speech does not apply in a private company setting. The risk, loss of revenue, backstopped by the circus. Learn. Social media control is everything. The age of the MSM is over. Q drop number 932. The creation of the internet and connecting platforms is bringing about their downfall. Failure to control MSM is dead. Hashtag Internet Bill of Rights. Q. When online content disappears, 38% of web pages that existed in 2013 are no longer accessible a decade later. The internet is an unimaginably vast repository of modern life, with hundreds of billions of indexed web pages. But even as users across the world rely on the web to access books, images, news articles, and other resources, this content sometimes disappears from view. A new Pew Research Center analysis shows just how fleeting online content actually is. First, a quarter of all web pages that existed at one point between 2013 and 2023 are no longer accessible as of October 2023. In most cases, this is because an individual page was deleted or removed on an otherwise functional website. For older content, this trend is even starker. Some 38% of web pages that existed in 2013 are not available today, compared with 8% of pages that existed in 2023. This digital decay occurs in many different online spaces. We examined the links that appear on government and news websites, as well as in the reference section of Wikipedia pages as of spring 2023. This analysis found that, first, 23% of news web pages contain at least one broken link, as do 21% of web pages from government sites. News sites with a high level of site traffic and those with less are about equally likely to contain broken links. Local level government web pages, those belonging to city governments, are especially likely to have broken links. And second, 54% of Wikipedia pages contain at least one link in their references section that points to a page that no longer exists. To see how digital decay plays out on social media, we also collected a real-time sample of tweets during spring 2023 on the social media platform X, then known as Twitter, and followed them for 3 months. We found that, first, nearly 1 in 5 tweets are no longer publicly visible on the site just months after being posted. In 60% of these cases, the account that originally posted the tweet was made private, suspended, or deleted entirely. In the other 40%, the account holder deleted the individual tweet, but the account itself still existed. Second, certain types of tweets tend to go away more often than others. More than 40% of tweets written in Turkish or Arabic are no longer visible on the site within 3 months of being posted, and tweets from accounts with the default profile settings are especially likely to disappear from public view. Q drop number 993 of April 3rd, 2018. WWG1WGA, drops will go fast. WH, clean, SIG. Marker, everything is planned. Years, message, unity, awakening, we fight. Lexington, conquered, stay together. Q. Follow Bolton, clean, stage. Learn how to archive offline. The streets will not be safe for them. Q. Next. Archive.org. Internet Archive stands firm on library digital rights in final brief of Hatchet v. Internet Archive lawsuit. This is from April 19th, 2024. Today, the Internet Archive has taken a decisive final step in our ongoing battle for libraries' digital rights by submitting the final appellate reply brief in Hatchet v. Internet Archive, the publisher's lawsuit against our library. This move reaffirms Internet Archive's unwavering commitment to fulfilling our mission of providing universal access to all knowledge, even in the face of steep legal challenges. Read the final appellate reply brief. Statement from Brewster Kayla, or maybe Kale, founder and digital librarian of the Internet Archive. Quote, Resolving this should be easy. Just sell ebooks to libraries so we can own, preserve, and lend them to one person at a time. This is a battle for the soul of libraries in the digital age. End quote. This process has taken nearly 4 years to work through the legal system, and in that time, we've often fielded the question, why should I care about this lawsuit? By restricting libraries' ability to lend the books they own digitally, the publisher's license-only business model and litigation strategies perpetuate inequality in access to knowledge. Throughout this legal battle, Internet Archive has remained steadfast in our mission to defend the core values of libraries, preservation, access, and education. This fight is not just about protecting the Internet Archive's digital lending program. It's about standing up for the digital rights of all libraries and ensuring that future generations have equal access to the wealth of knowledge contained within them. Let's check out the YouTube link.
When the great library burned, the first 10,000 years of stories were reduced to ash. But those stories never really perished. They became a new story. The story of the fire itself. Of man's urge to take a thing of beauty and strike the match. Is this the story you're telling? Striking the match? I keep telling you, Bernard, it is no longer my story. It is yours.
This reminds me of kind of the last few, that reminded me of kind of the last few episodes of the 4th season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. All right. Q drop number 1375. Autists, we thank you. Patriots, we thank you. We came here for a reason. Freedom of information. No filters. History books. Be proud. Together. Where we go one, we go all. Q.
You can just call me rude bitch.
Q drop number 3617. News unlocks. You have more than you know. Q. From the Washington Post, October 18th, 2024. The world's largest internet archive is under siege and fighting back. Hackers breached the Internet Archive, whose outsized cultural importance belies a small budget and lean infrastructure. There are few organizations dedicated to the gargantuan task of preserving the vast, ever-shifting record of human activity that is the Internet. The largest such record belongs to a nonprofit based in an old church in San Francisco that operates on a smaller annual budget than the DC Public Library. It is currently under siege. Hackers struck the Internet Archive last week, leaking the information of millions of users and defacing it with a message taunting the nonprofit's website for running on a shoestring budget. To prevent further leaks, the Internet Archive's team took the site, including its popular Wayback Machine, offline. It's the first time in its almost 30-year history that it has suffered an outage of longer than a few hours, founder Brewster Kayla told the Washington Post. Most of the site remains offline a week later. The cyber attack kicked off a frenzied race to restore access to the Internet Archive and the more than 900 billion web pages it preserves on the Wayback Machine, its archival service. It was also a rude awakening to Kayla, sorry about the mispronunciation of your name, sir, that hackers would set their sights on a free repository of digital history, seemingly without an agenda or a ransom, is hard to imagine. The attack drew allusions online to the burning of the Library of Alexandria, the sprawling repository of knowledge in ancient Egypt that writers of the time claimed Julius Caesar accidentally torched. It's a dramatic comparison, but most agree that the Internet Archive has played a foundational role in the upkeep of online history. Other web archival services exist, but the Internet Archive, which was founded in 1996, maintains the largest and oldest archive of the Internet. If you've ever had to search for an old or defunct website, you've probably been directed to the Internet Archive or its Wayback Machine. The organization archives websites cited by editors on Wikipedia. Attorneys plumb the Wayback Machine for evidence to use in court. The Internet Archive was among several groups that preserved deleted tweets by former President Donald Trump, it wrote in 2017. Kayla and his team see the mission of the Internet Archive as a noble one, to build a library of everything and ensure records are kept in an online environment where websites change and disappear by the day. But the site has, at times, courted controversy. The Internet Archive faces lawsuits from book publishers and music labels brought in 2020 and 2023 for digitizing copyrighted books and music, which the organization has argued should be permissible for non-commercial archival purposes. Kayla said the hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties that the lawsuits could sink the Internet Archive. Those lawsuits are ongoing. Now, the Internet Archive has also had to turn its attention to fending off cyber attacks. In May, the Internet Archive was hit with a distributed denial of service attack, a fairly common type of internet warfare that involves flooding a target site with fake traffic. The archive experienced intermittent outages as a result. Kayla said it was the first time the site had been targeted in its history. Last week, the DDoS attacks resumed, but things escalated quickly. On October 9th, in a separate, more critical security breach, hackers inserted a message on the Internet Archive's main page bragging they had stolen information from 31 million of its users. Scott Helm, a cybersecurity researcher, told the Post that if hackers compromised the Internet Archive to the extent that they were able to deface the website, they could have done much worse. Quote, with that level of access, genuinely, they could have done anything, Helm said. They could have put inappropriate materials. If they were politically motivated, they could have used the platform to make statements. They could have used the website to distribute malware. It was a 5-alarm fire for Kayla, who quickly decided to take the site offline. The group is also puzzling over why it came under attack. The Internet Archive's preserved data was not compromised during the hack, Kayla said, and the team hasn't faced a ransom demand. A hacking group on X claimed responsibility for the DDoS attacks, but no one has reliably claimed the defacement and data breach that forced the Internet Archive to sequester itself, said Helm, the cybersecurity researcher. He added that the hackers' decision to alert the Internet Archive of their intrusion and send the stolen data have I been pwned, the monitoring service, could imply they didn't have further intentions with it. It could have just been someone flexing their muscles, Helm said. The Internet Archive and its Wayback Machine service were offline for several days, during which the organization's vast catalog of web pages and other archives, including music, books, software, and imagery, was inaccessible. The organization restored a read-only version of the Wayback Machine, Kayla said Monday on X, but is still working to bring the rest of the organization's archives back online. People want to access the past, Kayla said, and our job is to help deliver it and to be always there. Helm said the episode demonstrates the vulnerability of nonprofit services like the Internet Archive and of the larger ecosystem of information online that depends on them. Quote, perhaps they'll find some more funding now that all of these headlines have happened, Helm said, and people suddenly realize how bad it would be if they were gone. Extract from Q drop number 1186. The importance of this cannot be expressed more clearly. Archive, offline, immediately, offline only.
There is an ancient Indian saying that something lives only as long as the last person who remembers it. My people have come to trust memory over history. Memory, like fire, is radiant and immutable. While history serves only those who seek to control it, those who would douse the flame of memory in order to put out the dangerous fire of truth. Beware these men, for they are dangerous themselves and unwise. Their false history is written in the blood of those who might remember and of those who seek the truth.
That, my friends, is our show for today. I have a new sponsor for you guys, and this is from wpetersen. So he wrote me a script for this, but I've been really trying to figure out how to bring this to your attention. And it's very important to me because I am an internet retailer myself. So just check this out real quick. Hey, business owners, it's time to rethink the way you handle payments. Are you tired of high transaction fees, hidden charges, long-term contracts with early termination penalties? Are there major pinch points to how you're processing that just piss you off? Let me introduce you to a better way with Propeller. That's Propeller. At Propeller, we specialize in helping businesses like yours process transactions more efficiently and at a lower cost. We provide you with all the tools you need to succeed without locking you into a restrictive contract. That's right, no early termination fees ever. Our top-tier industry partnerships mean we can offer you the best services on the market. Whether you're looking to streamline your processing or cut down on costs, we've got you covered. Call wpetersen, who has 15 years experience and is here to help you take control of your payment processing. Give him a call at 651-271-4737 or shoot him an email at wpetersen@propellerpay.com. That's wpetersen@propellerpay.com. I'll put a link in the description as well. Let's get your business on the path to more efficient and cost-effective payment solutions today. So if you go to propeller.com, I'll just check it out real quick. PROPELR pay.com. Show you the website real quick. So payment solutions, the ones that we have right now are controlled by the blob. So check it out at propellerpay.com, PROPELR pay.com /frictionless. Check it out. I'll put links in the description. Thanks everybody for watching today. A pleasure to bring you the work of Root Bitch. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow.